Okay. Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to study about Lag BaOmer. Many of us know what we do on Lag BaOmer. We know it's a day where we celebrate, a day of rejoicing, but there is a little bit less known about why we do what we do on Lag BaOmer. What's the significance behind it? Where does Lag BaOmer come from? Now, Lag BaOmer is not a day that we can look in the Chumash, to look in the Torah, the written Torah, and find anything about Lag BaOmer. We find things about Rosh Hashanah, about Yom Kippur, about Sukkot, page 62 of the student book. But we don't find anything about Lag BaOmer because Lag BaOmer does not start historically from going out of Egypt. It starts much later in the time of the Talmud. So the first reference we find to Lag BaOmer is a reference to the fact that during the Sefirat HaOmer, during the time period between Pesach and Shavuos, 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva died. We have it in the Gemara, the Talmud, in the Tractate of Yevamot, page 62b, that it was said that Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of disciples, which 12,000 pairs is 24,000. And all of them died at the same time because they did not treat each other with respect. And Tana taught all of them died between Passover and Shavuos. So between Pesach and Shavuos, 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva died. For that reason, we have a certain sense of mourning. To commemorate this tragic passing, what kind of customs, what minhagei avelud, what customs of mourning do we follow? So we bring here from the Shulchan that it's customary not to marry during these days, or to take a haircut on the days between Pesach and Shavuos. As well, we also have a custom not to buy something new. In other words, because we would be saying Shechiyanu, we don't want to be too celebratory during this period. The reason for this is the state of mourning for the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva who died during this period. So now, however, the custom is, Shulchan Aruch tells us that on the 33rd day of the Omer, that was when the last of the 24,000 died. And the plague, in other words, the plague had stopped. Thus, it is customary to increase in joy on this day. We don't say Tachanun, for they stopped dying on this day. So interesting. How do we know? Where's the first source that they stopped dying on Lag BaOmer? Because the Talmud does not say that they stopped dying. It says that they were dying between Pesach and Shavuos. And that's why we have mourning between Pesach and Shavuos. But where do we know that they stopped dying on Lag BaOmer? So we have here in text number 3, on page 63, from the Meiri. There's a commentary on the Talmud called the Meiri. He passed away in 1310. So that tells us he was 700 years ago. Passed away almost 700 years, more than 700 years ago. And he wrote in commentary on the Talmud that there's a tradition from the Gaonim. The Gaonim were several hundred years before that, something like 1,000 years ago, that the plague stopped on Lag BaOmer. That's the tradition that they had. Therefore, it's customary not to fast on that day. It's also customary not to get married from Pesach until that time of Lag BaOmer. And therefore, there are some people that have the custom that from Lag BaOmer on, they do hold weddings. Restrictions of mourning are totally relaxed. The custom, Chabad, is that we observe the entire period from Pesach to Shavuos without having any weddings, save for 3 days before Shavuos, where there already becomes the Shloshet Yimei Hagbalah, the 3 days of preparation towards Shavuos. And that's when we relax the laws, restrictions of the mourning. But at any rate, the Meiri does bring a tradition from an even earlier source who wrote that the custom in France and Provence is to get married from Lag BaOmer and on. And he records in the name of Rabbi Zerachia Halevi from Gerona, Spain, that he found recorded in an old book from Spain. Again, we're talking here about material that's about 1,000 years old. And he found recorded in an old book, at that time was old, that Rabbi Akiva's students died from Passover until what's called in Aramaic, Piros Atzeres. Piros usually means half. So if the word Piros means half, So what would that mean? That would mean halfway through the period that we are supposed to prepare for the holiday. How long do we usually have to prepare for a holiday, before the holiday? 30 yom. Usually before a holiday. We prepare 30 days before an event. We're supposed to start being cognizant of that event. So 30 days before Pesach is Purim, right? After Purim we start preparing for Pesach. 30 days before Sukkot is the 15th day. And so it is. Every time before you come, 30 days before the date. So now when we talk about, it says that the students of Rabbi Akiva stop dying halfway through Shavuos, meaning halfway through the preparatory period for Shavuos. If 30 days is the preparatory period and they died halfway through that period, so that would be 15 days before Shavuos. If you count 15 days back from Shavuos, what do you get to? You get to Lag BaOmer. Let's do the mathematics. Shavuos is the 50th day. If we minus 15, which was the 49th day, if you minus 15, before the 49 minus 15, doesn't seem to work. We should try this offline. Excuse me. The Lag BaOmer is the 18th.
34, right?
34. Lag BaOmer is 18. So let's do this. If Lag BaOmer they stopped dying, so that was the last day they died. Let's say. So that's the 18th of Iyar. So we have the 19th of Iyar, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. 1st of Sivan, 2nd of Sivan, 3rd of Sivan, 4th of Sivan. The 15th day is the 6th, which is 16th day. The 6th is the, so there is 15 complete days between Rosh Hashanah, Lag BaOmer and Shavuos. You have 15 days. From the 34th day of the Omer till the 49th, 34th to 49 is 15.
Yes.
So you have 15 days. So they understood that the day that they completed to die was on Lag BaOmer. Rabbi Akiva? We're talking Rabbi Akiva students dying. We'll give you an exact date. You'll find the codex, my father's book, if you find it. It should be here somewhere. The Codex Encyclopedia. And we'll give an exact date for when Rabbi Akiva was, in a way that we can understand in the Gregorian calendar. That's a good idea. We should pick it out. I believe that I just saw it somewhere here. Saw it? It's here somewhere, so if you get it for me. And that's a plug, an online plug for my father's book, the Codex Judaica, a history book that spans history from the beginning till now. It's a tremendous book. At any rate, so this was. We have it? Okay, we have it. So we're going to look up quickly Rabbi Akiva. We're going to see when. Thank you. And one of the best things is we have here the seat of the presidents of the Sanhedrin, page 131. There's a lot of indexes here, which is a beautiful thing. In the Roman period, we have Leo and Beitar. So he's around the time of Beitar. Rabbi Akiva. Well, Rabbi Yeshua died. A skilled voice was lost in debating the early Christians. The elderly Rabbi Akiva, who had lost thousands of disciples in a plague, succeeded him as Av Bedin in Usha. So Rabbi Akiva lost his. Rabbi Akiva became the leader of the Beit Din, the Av Beit Din, the head of the Beit Din, in the year 120. In the year 120 CE.
About 2,000 and something years ago.
We're now 2017. So that's 19, basically 1900 years ago. 1900 years ago, and he had lost his students before that. In year 104, Rabbi Akiva was already, I'm not sure what year they died, but somewhere between 104 and 120.
our era or
Our era, common era. So again, we're talking about a little bit more than 1900 years ago. The Gaonim, the first source that we find for marking Lag BaOmer, if we look at when the Gaonim were, Gaonim are the first source, and they are to be found again. This is wonderful because it has a lot of charts. The Gaonim, they were, by the way, one of the things we know very well that the Gaonim brought into our tradition is for the Ashkenazi community not to eat kitniot, not to eat rice and things like that. That's from the Gaonim. So the Gaonim are from about the year 576, and 576. How many years ago is that? In the Gregorian calendar, till about 1040. So it's a long period. No, we're talking about 1500 years ago. Approximately
1500 years.
Approximately 1500 years ago.
The year of, okay.
1500 years ago. So so that's the earliest. That is the earliest record of marking Lag BaOmer. The Gaonim spread from basically from about 500 years, 400 from year 600 till about the year to the mid 1040, 1050. It's difficult to give exact years, but it's about 500 years. So we're talking the earliest source for Lag BaOmer. You're saying is from the Gaonim.
Are there any details in terms of like what kind of disease it was?
No. No, apparently it was obvious that it was a God-given thing. They died at a short period of time. They died en masse, and it was obvious that this was something that was a punishment or a warning or for something. At any rate, because it was such a large group of souls that died, so the Jewish people had instituted a time of mourning. However, that time of mourning ended at some place, and we have the source to say that this was Lag BaOmer. Okay, so that's one aspect of Lag BaOmer, which is it's a day where the dying stopped, and therefore we relaxed the mourning. That still wouldn't really give a reason why we should mark it as a day of joy. It would be some joy, but it's kind of the joy. There's a famous joke of a guy who bought a pair of shoes that are one size too small. They asked him, "Why did you buy such a shoes? Why did you buy a regular size?" He said, "Because at least when I get home every night, it doesn't matter how good or bad my day was. It could be there was nothing could happen. When I take off my shoes, it's a relief." So that's the kind of relief we have. The students stop dying on Lag BaOmer. Wow. And it is, obviously, they stop dying. It's a day of joy. But that's not really going to explain why Lag BaOmer looks today like it looks, in the day of extreme joy and rejoicing, especially as we move to the next point of Lag BaOmer, which is Miron. Miron already moves into the talk about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the author of the Zohar, who lived at around the same time of Rabbi Akiva, was a student of Rabbi Akiva, and this is the day of his passing. Let's see in text number 6. Now, we'll quote now from the Zohar. We're going to quote from the book of the Zohar. The Zohar does not say when this took place. The student of the Arizal, Rabbi Chaim Vital, he wrote that the Arizal celebrated or marked Lag BaOmer as the day of passing of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. But let's understand what happened on the day of passing and why that day of passing is not a day of mourning, rather it's a day of joy. So we're going to quote it from the Zohar, text number 6. We have learned, this is a quote from the Zohar. On the day that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was to depart the world, he began arranging his teachings. The disciples gathered together at the house of Rabbi Shimon. Before him were Rabbi Elazar, his son Rabbi Abba, and the other disciples, so that the house was full. While they were sitting, Rabbi Shimon opened his eyes. Then fire surrounded the house so that everybody fled outside, leaving only Rabbi Elazar, who was the son of Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Abba. Rabbi Shimon said, "Now is an auspicious time. I wish to enter the world to come without shame. For the holy matters that I did not reveal until now, I wish to reveal in the presence of the Shekhinah, so that no one will say that I left the world without fulfilling my task, and that I concealed these secrets in my heart until now, so that they would come with me to the world to come. I will present them to you. Rabbi Abba shall write, and Rabbi Elazar, my son, will review them, and the remaining disciples must whisper them in their hearts. I see today is special for God, and all the righteous ones are rejoicing in my celebration." Rabbi Abba recalls, "I was writing. In the middle of quoting a verse, Rabbi Shimon stopped at the word Chaim, which means life. I waited, wanting to continue, but did not raise my head to see why Rabbi Shimon had stopped, for I was unable to look at the great light that was shining all around him. Suddenly I heard a voice call out a verse with the word Chaim, and then another voice called out an additional verse. I fell to the ground and wept. When the fire and light departed, I saw that the great luminary Rabbi Shimon had passed away. He was lying on his right side and his face was smiling." This is the story of the passing of Rabbi Shimon. The Zohar continues a little bit later, and they came and gathered for the Hilula of Rabbi Shimon. Hilula means a wedding, usually. Here we're talking about the passing. So in the Zohar, they're talking about the gathering to celebrate the passing of Rabbi Shimon, calling it a day of celebration like a wedding. But from that moment on, like omer became a day to celebrate the great light. In other words, we're celebrating the wisdom that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai shared with the world. And as we will see, that the day when somebody passes away, tzaddik, the sum total, a tzaddik who's lived his life in total purity, total piety, total tzidkut, the day that he finishes what he has to do, as we saw Rabbi Shimon describing, I want to come to the world to come, having done my entire mission. The day of the culmination of his mission, that is the day of his passing. So the day of passing is not the lowest point. Sometimes we think of life as going up, up, up in our youth, reaching middle age and cruising, and then down, 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 till we ebb away, till we fade away. Not at all. It's tzaddik. Somebody who's righteous, somebody who's reached this level and done always, all his lifetime, that's what he's supposed to do. It's a constant ascent. And the day of the passing of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, he revealed the greatest secrets that there were to reveal. And with that great shining light, the zenith of his life, he passed away. So it becomes a day for tzaddik, whose whole life is spirituality. That's the day of the greatest heights of spirituality. So it becomes the greatest day. And that's why the tradition is that for great people, the day of their passing is not a day, it's a day of, actually there's an element of joy to it. There's an element of sadness because the person is no longer here in this physical world with us. There's an element of joy because the tzaddik reached his greatest peak of that. And therefore, we have here quoted that the minhag in Israel is to visit the resting place of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son Elazar on the day of Lag BaOmer. So this is one of the customs is to make a pilgrimage, to go and visit Miron, visit the resting place of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, because as we find, this is something already mentioned in Rashi. And Rashi says, it's a Rashi, an interesting Rashi in the tractate of Yevamot 122a. He writes as follows: I found in the response of the Geonim, we say, remember the Geonim we say started 1500 years ago, and I found written in one of their books that the day a great person passes is marked as a day to honor him. Every year when that day arrives, scholars from all over converge on his resting place and stay there. So we see that there is a tradition already marked 1500 years ago that on the resting day of the passing of a tzaddik, that's a day to visit his resting place, to study there and to pray there. We even find it in the Gemara where in page 68, text 9, the Gemara says the following, that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi met Eliyahu, Elijah the prophet, standing by the entrance of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai's tomb. He had obviously come to pray at the tomb of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, and he saw Eliyahu there as well. And he asked, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi asked Eliyahu, have I a portion in the world to come? And Eliyahu answered, if this master desires it, this master referring to Hashem. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, I saw two. Who were the two people? In other words, I saw myself and Eliyahu, but I heard the voice of a third. In other words, I heard the voice of Hashem, so to speak. So, what was present at the resting place of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, the great tzaddik, was the presence of the Shekhinah. So we understand that that special space is a place where there is a heightened level of godly revelation. And the day of the passing is a day where there's an opportunity to tap in to that special energy, to that special kedusha, that special sanctity. And therefore, we know that great Jewish sages, Kabbalist Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, the great famous Rabbi Yosef Karo, who wrote the Shulchan Aruch, who's something like 500-600 years ago, they used to go on Lag BaOmer. They used to go and pray. They lived in Tzfat, not far from Meron. They used to go and pray periodically at the grave of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai in Meron. And we find an interesting thing from written by Rabbi Ovadia of Bartanura. You may know him from the Mishnah. He's one of the main classic commentator on the Mishnah. We call him the Bartanura. His name was Rabbi Ovadia from Bartanura in Italy. Today there's a famous wine, a bubbly wine called Bartanura, named after the place in Italy where it comes from. So the Bartanura, Rabbi Ovadia of Bartanura said, and he passed away in the 16th century, so this is more than 500 years ago, he describes as following. He describes that on the 18th day of the month of Iyar, which is the day of Lag BaOmer, the anniversary of the passing of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, Jews from all the surrounding areas gather in Meron, where they light large fires and celebrate. And he writes as follows, that it's a tradition that is known, again this is 500 years ago plus, that many barren couples who couldn't have children conceive after they visit the grave of Rabbi Shimon, and many sick are healed. The merit of the charity they give on this day to the upkeep of the gravesite. In other words, a special place to do good deeds, a special place to pray, and a special day. Rabbi Chaim Vital, the chief student of the Arizal, the one who documented, basically the main source of our knowledge about the great Kabbalistic sage, the Arizal, who passed away, Rabbi Chaim Vital passed away in 1620. So again, he's 400 years ago. And he writes as follows. In regard to the custom of many who travel to visit the graves of Rabbi Shimon and his son Rabbi Elazar in Meron, with celebrations and festive meals, I witnessed how my master and teacher, talking about the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, I witnessed how he traveled there on the first Lag BaOmer after he arrived in Israel from Egypt. He used to live in Egypt and he moved to Israel, with his family and disciples, and stayed for 3 days. And another student, Rabbi Yonatan Sagis, had told me, says Rabbi Chaim Vital, that even before I had met him, the Ari and his entire family traveled to Meron on Lag BaOmer, where they gave his son his first haircut, as is the custom. And the following story is told, text 11b. And this is actually the story that we call a frightful or awesome story. Why? Because it's following the story. Rabbi Chaim Vital says about my colleague Rabbi Avram Halevi. He told me that he had a custom to recite morning prayers for the destruction of the temple, the Nachem, which we usually say only on Tisha B'Av. But he had a tradition to say it every day of the year. He missed the Beis HaMikdash so much, the godly revelation of the temple so much, he said it every day of the year. And he also did it that year on Lag BaOmer when they were in Meron, in the daily prayers that he said while he was next to the grave of Rabbi Shimon. After he finished praying, it's Rabbi Avram, a great sage himself, the Ari, their master, their Kabbalistic master, turned to him and told him that Rabbi Shimon himself, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, had just appeared to the Ari Zal and told him to rebuke Rabbi Abraham because he had expressed mourning at his grave. And on the day of Lag BaOmer, the day of Rabbi Shimon's personal rejoicing, and the story that we don't quote here, but the story that is continuing situation is that because of this mistake, that he had brought an element of mourning for the temple into the great, beautiful, special day of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in the space, physical space where Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai lays, he got the punishment that he did not live. He did not live the entire the next year. So, in other words, it's something very. The joy and rejoicing is so intense and so special that even if you want to mourn for something very, very beautiful like the missing the Beis Hamikdash, that's not a time to do it. So this tells us about how much joy there is on that day. Now, what else? What other kind of a tradition is there? Well, there's a tradition that if the child is 3 around that time, between Pesach and Lag BaOmer, we will do the first haircut on Lag BaOmer, because that's when we can take haircuts at the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's resting place. From that is the custom. Many people go to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai even during the year and we'll do the first haircut there. But then there's another custom of bonfires. Where does that come from? So the same thing is also mentioned in the letter from Rabbi Ovadia of Bar Tanura from 500 years ago. He writes as follows. This is text 12. As the night of Lag BaOmer settles in, the custom in the holy village of Meron is to climb on the roof of Bar Yochai's cave, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's cave. There's a stand there with a large bucket filled with oil, clothing, and gold. A large burning stick is used to light the bucket of fire, and it turns into a large bonfire. This is the custom throughout the entire Holy Land. As the fire burns, people sing songs and praises to God, and musicians play their instruments and honor the divine sage, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. This is actually still done today. The main bonfire, the bonfire is like a candle, but a candle in multiple candles. It adds light, it adds joy, it adds a celebratory aspect. That's the meaning of a bonfire. You sing around the bonfire. But the bonfire also symbolizes like a big yahrzeit candle in a sense, the neshama going up. It also symbolizes the light, the Kabbalistic light that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai brought to this world. And simply speaking, it brings an atmosphere of joy. Don't forget that they didn't have electricity. And so when you lit a big bonfire, you created a whole aura of light where you could sit around, you could rejoice even in the night. And this is what was done always on the... and remember we said about the spiritual light that surrounded Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai as he passed away. This is also symbolized by the bonfire. So this is where we have the tradition of making bonfires on Lag BaOmer in honor of the passing of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. The spiritual light that enveloped him, the light that he brought to the world, the aspect of fire, light, bringing joy, warmth. And this is all done, this is expressed by the bonfires of Lag BaOmer. Don't forget that in Israel it's usually springtime. It's nice weather. It's maybe a little cool at night up there in Sfas, Meron. Not like here in Thailand where we make a bonfire, the bonfire becomes, it's hot as it is. But because we keep that tradition and in the honor of Shimon Chai, it's still an enjoyable thing, and we can dance around it, and so on and so forth. So, there's another custom, and that is the custom of the bow and arrow. In Israel, you will see people going around with the bow and arrow. What is the custom of the bow and arrow? So one of the reasons is, what do we know? We know that Hashem said, when He wanted to bring the flood, after the world was destroyed by the flood in the time of Noah, Hashem promised, I will never bring a flood again. And how will I show you and remind you that even if I'm upset at the world, I won't bring a flood again? A rainbow. So the bow reminds us of the rainbow. Why do we remember the rainbow in the context of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai? The reason is that it says that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was such a great sage, such a great tzaddik, that during his lifetime, Hashem never got upset with the world to the extent that he needed to remind himself and us through a rainbow that he's promised not to destroy the world again. In other words, when you see a rainbow, there is a blessing we say when we see a rainbow, thanking Hashem for keeping His word and keeping His promise. On the other hand, we try not to look too deeply at a rainbow. Don't try and look for rainbows. Why? Because a rainbow is bittersweet. It's Hashem saying, I'm not going to destroy you. But that's saying, 1 second. That means that maybe he's a little bit upset, so to speak, about the behavior of things that are going on in this world. That he would contemplate doing a flood like he did when he was upset at the terrible behavior of the people pre-flood. But now he's not going to do, he's going to hold off, and that's why there's a rainbow. So something bittersweet to that. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was such a great tzaddik that he had the ability through his saintliness and through his merits and through his greatness that during his lifetime the Jewish people and the world in general was protected. They didn't even need a rainbow. God never was displeased with the world to the extent that there needed to be a rainbow to hold him back, to, God forbid, bring some kind of calamity to the world. This was the greatest Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and we remind ourselves of this by playing with a bow and arrow. Also, it says in the Zohar that before Mashiach comes, there'll be a very special rainbow. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Bright and vivid rainbow, but there is a mention of that in the Zohar. So that's where the concept of bows and arrows come to the Jewish tradition of Lag BaOmer. Now, there's also a tradition to eat carobs, chaluvim. Why is there a tradition to eat carobs here? We don't really have a carob, I don't think. But boxer, it's called boxer as well in English. B-O-K-S-A, I think. The boxer fruit. Usually it's very dry. When it's fresh, it's nice and sweet. Actually, they make, you'll find that carob is sometimes used as a substitute for chocolate. Because the carob is very sweet, but only when it's fresh, it's very, very sweet. But apparently it dries out on the tree, and very often it's used in its dry form. You try and eat dry boxer, dry chaluv, you have to be very careful for your teeth. It's extremely dry. Oh, it's brittle. It's very when it's totally dry. But where does that tradition come to eat carobs? So in text 13, we bring for the Gemara in Shabbos that the context is that Rabbi Shimon was once overheard telling the truth about the Roman government and criticizing the Roman government. And so there was a death penalty issued, a death warrant issued on Rabbi Shimon Chai, and he and his son had to go and hide. They took refuge in a cave where they hid for 13 years. But what did they eat? So the Talmud described as follows. So due to the mortal danger from the authorities, they went and hid in a cave. A miracle occurred, and a carob tree and a well were created for them. They would strip their garments and sit up to their neck in sand. The entire day they studied while covered only in the sand. When it was time for prayers, they robed, covered themselves, prayed, and then put off their garments again so that they should not wear out their garments. They didn't know how long they'd have to be there. Thus, they dwelt 12 years in the cave. So basically, they survived on water and carobs. That's why there's a tradition to commemorate that by eating carobs. Now, there's a tradition that the day of Lag BaOmer is a day where there's miracles, great miracles attributed to prayers made at the grave of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. The Rebbe taught us that the graves of all tzaddikim are interconnected, because even tzaddikim that are buried outside of Israel, there are special tunnels that will take them when the resurrection comes, when Tchias HaMesim comes directly to Israel. Tzaddikim, the resting places of all righteous people in the world are interrelated, interconnected. So like BaOmer, you can go to the resting place of any tzaddik. Of course, the Rebbe would go to the resting place of his father-in-law, the previous Rebbe, and Chassidim today go to the resting place of the Rebbe. Lag BaOmer. But then, Lag BaOmer in Chabad. What was Lag BaOmer in Chabad? How was it celebrated? So an interesting talk from the second Rebbe, the son of the founder of Chabad, the son of the Alter Rebbe, which is brought down in text 14. It's from the entry in Hayom Yom for 18th of year. And it says as follows. For the Mittler Rebbe, by Dov Ber, the second Chabad Rebbe, Lag BaOmer was among the most special Jewish holidays. He would go out to the fields, and though he personally did not partake of the actual meal, although everybody else did, he would say L'chaim. He would say L'chaim on Mashke. There would be many wonders that were seen then. He would give blessings, and people would be very blessed by his blessings, especially on that day. The majority of them were in regard to the blessing of having children. For a whole year they would wait for Lag BaOmer. And actually, Chassidim, knowing this, would wait during the lifetime of the Rebbe. They would wait for the Rebbe of Lag BaOmer and try and get a blessing, particularly for children. The time that they would particularly know they could wait for the Rebbe was the Rebbe would go to the resting place of his father-in-law, the previous Rebbe. Anytime the Rebbe went to the resting place of his father-in-law, he first visited the mikveh. So during the day, he would go to the mikveh, his car. The mikveh would be prepared for him, especially because nobody else would be there. But while the Rebbe was going into the mikveh, out from the mikveh, many times women would wait there on Lag BaOmer particularly and ask for a bracha for children. So Lag BaOmer is a special day by all tzaddikim. Particularly, this is the way it's recorded in Chabad. Now, beginning already in the 1950s, our Rebbe, the Rebbe, encouraged very much parades. Jewish children to get together on the day of Lag BaOmer and have parades of Jewish unity and pride. And the reason for that being, we know first of all that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, whose day we celebrate, he was a student of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva's students stopped dying in Lag BaOmer. What was Rabbi Akiva's main axiom? One of the 12 passages we say, the kids say constantly, is V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Love your fellow as yourself. Alma Rabbi Akiva taught. Zeh klal gadol b'Torah. This is one of the main rules of the Torah. So Rabbi Akiva, who's the teacher, Rabbi Shimon Yochai, taught that the main and most important rule of the Torah is love your fellow as yourself. The students of Rabbi Akiva died. Why did they die? Our sages tell us because they were not respectful of each other. They were not respectful of each other. Lo na'agu kavod zeh b'zeh. So if that's the reason that they passed, and this is the day that they stopped passing, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is the main student, one of the main students of Rabbi Akiva from after the period of one of the remaining students of Rabbi Akiva. So on that day we have to emphasize very strongly this concept of v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your fellow as yourself. At the same time, it has to be done with great joy, because this is also the day of celebration of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And so the joy that's created in a way of unity and in a way of pride is by having parades. And this is a tradition that was done in New York, just outside the headquarters of the Lubavitch World Headquarters, 770 Eastern Parkway, the main roadway. Eastern Parkway is a 6-lane highway, 6-lane road, maybe 8-lane. Is blocked off, and there's a big seats are put on the parkway. The Rebbe would come out and address